What is up, sugar bushes? We are back here in my old room that my mom has turned into a fabulous horse girl room. But nonetheless, let's get to some true crime. So today we are going to be talking about Heaven's Gate. So I love me some cults. I've told you it over and over again. Big fan of the old cult stuff. So I've always been fascinated by Heaven's Gate. Like I said when we did Jonestown, something about people blindly following somebody and giving everything to them, it really just fascinates me. So when we pulled Heaven's Gate out of the old murder pot, I was very excited. So let's get started. And I mean, if we're being candid, would I have joined Heaven's Gate? Maybe. I don't know, the spiel they gave in the beginning sounds pretty freaking rad to me. It's just when you push back those first couple layers of the onion, then it's like, no, I'm good. I ain't cutting my balls off for nobody. So Heaven's Gate was a new religious movement founded by Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles. So how did these two individuals come to meet each other? Well, I'll sure as hell tell you. So Marshall was the son of a Presbyterian minister, and if there's anything, that I've learned personally about sons of ministers or priests or whatever religion, is that they're pretty freaking weird. Something about it, they all just turn out weird, don't know what it is. It's like a rule of life or something. If your father's a priest, probably gonna be a weird dude. So around the 70s, Marshall gets super into like biblical prophecy, things of that nature. And he's then fired from the University of St. Thomas in Houston, Texas, for having an alleged homosexual relationship with one of his male students. Also, just gonna tell you this right now, I am extremely tired. I've been up since God knows when yesterday. Worked till 8 a.m., drove all the way to my parents' house, so bear with me here. But anywhoozle, after he's fired, around 1972, he goes to a psychiatric hospital. Now, it's speculated that he was there as a patient or he was there visiting. I couldn't find a definitive answer, so for the funsies of it, we're just going to say he was there as a patient. So while he is there, he meets Bonnie Nettles. Now, who is Bonnie Nettles, you might ask? Well, I'm going to tell you who Bonnie Nettles was. Now, on the outside, Bonnie Nettles seems like a very, normal person. She had a husband, she had kids, the whole 9 yard, white picket fence, have a good time. Well, she was a nurse, but Bonnie had a very heavy interest in theosophy. Now, she was obsessed with prophecies, biblical stuff, the whole 9 yards. She believed that she was being spoken to by a divine being, some kind of prophecy speaking to her from above. She would regularly go to seances, try to contact the spirit guide or the prophetic person she was speaking to, via mediums and psychics, things in that nature. And she was told something by one of her, prophetic entities that she must be on the lookout for. And then so they gives her a description of someone who they say, tells her that they will be the Messiah. And, look, I don't know, man. Maybe she was talking to some higher power, but it all kind of sounds like she's pants-a-craping crazy, and it's in her head. But whatever she's talking to tells her to be on the lookout for the signs of the new prophet. How come whenever these people talk to these higher powers that foretell the prophecy, they're not really any specifics with it? It's always the most vaguest bullshit answer. It's like, so for instance, she gets a message that basically says, be on the lookout for someone who's tall, white, and has light hair. And that could just be about anybody. So anyways, 1972, Miss Nettles here feasts her eyes on Marshall. And when she sees Marshall, it clicks in her head, that's the prophet. That's him right there. That's who my divine entity I was speaking to was telling me about. So she approaches Marshall and she says, you have divine energy in you. And that their meeting had been foretold to her by extraterrestrial beings. And I just wanted you to keep this in mind. This is a nurse at the psychiatric hospital talking to Marshall. Like, usually the people at the psychiatric hospital are supposed to, help you pull yourself out of delusions. Not Miss Nettles here. She basically just shut Marshall's arm in the back of a car and took off with the theory. Maybe it was some divine extraterrestrial being talking to her, because, they were into the same stuff, they believed the same thing, so maybe it was either just the universe bringing them together and was like, hey, you're crazy, hey, you're a different type of crazy, let's push you together, twist you all up, and just make us super crazy. Bonnie leaves her husband, leaves her kids. It's like, hey, see you later. I'm gonna go follow this tall white dude around for a while and see where it goes, you know. They legitimately believed that they had been given higher level minds than other people. That was their belief, is that, you know, people were given certain levels of thought and brain function, and they were given a higher level. So what do they do with that higher level? Well, they do what any person with a higher level mind would. They start writing pamphlets about how Jesus Christ was reincarnated as a Texan. It's not a joke that they really did that. But of course, it was like a very, very vague description of Marshall as well. So it was kind of about him. He pretty much saw himself. They believed that Marshall had the same extraterrestrial soul that Jesus Christ had, and that's why he was the prophet. So they gave themselves tons of nicknames. They used to call themselves Bo and Peep, Do and T, the UFO 2, the 2, just out here spitting out fire nicknames. I think, honestly, personally, I believe they could have got a little bit more creative with it. Like, I don't know, maybe throw some spice on it, you know, the 3-6 Martians, the notorious UFOs, or maybe Space Thugs in Harmony. I don't know. They could have called themselves the Outcasts, and it would be right, because once they started preaching their scriptures to other religions, they were like, hey, bud, we're pretty far-fetched, but that shit is way out there. But eventually, you know, even a broken clock is right twice a day, so they're going to get some followers. So they started preaching, putting out their pamphlets, their scriptures. They were just basically space hippies. That's what they were. And if you know anything about hippies, they're usually kind of assholes. So they start gaining kind of a following, and their disciples that they recruited, they referred to them as the crew. They're pretty much a hip-hop group already. Just start busting rhymes and putting out sick records, dude. And then, like, I think it was 1975, they had, like, a group meeting of 80 people, and everybody simultaneously, all at once, had a revelation basically stating that Marshall and Bonnie were the two witnesses that were portrayed in the end of time. Or the Bible story of the end time, my bad. So they firmly believed that you had to get rid of your worldly possessions, that your body was just a vehicle, basically, that was carrying your soul in this life, and once you passed, your body would be transferred into a higher being, if you believed in what they were preaching. I mean, we all have souls, yeah, but they believed that they would be transferred to alien intelligence. So later in 1975, the crew just up and vanished, and there were speculations like, oh, yeah, there were even some news stories like, what happened to these people? Did they just lead on into a higher plane or what? In reality, Bonnie and Marshall were really just taking them all around the country, living in vans, living in tents, scrounging up whatever money they could, panhandling, things like that. But the entire time they're doing all this, basically just being homeless, Bonnie and Marshall are telling them they're going to be reaching a higher evolutionary level, none like they've ever seen before. You will be almost equal to them in their higher mind self. The group Heaven's Gate wasn't always Heaven's Gate. You know, they used to be called the Human Individual Metamorphosis, or HIM for short, which is a great band. But like I said, no matter how many name changes they went to, it always led back to one thing, that Marshall believed that he was directly related to Jesus Christ, that the same extraterrestrial soul that inhabited Jesus Christ's body when he was alive has now inhabited his body. So they heavily regarded themselves as longtime truth seekers, and in reality, the religion that Bonnie and Marshall had created was kind of a smorgasbord of all the other religions, and then you threw some Star Trek in it, and there you go, you got Heaven's Gate. And that appealed to a lot of people, because a lot of the people that they recruited were basically, you know, hippie-esque, from far left, very diverse, alternative religious backgrounds, and it appealed to a lot of people, as well as, like, I don't know, man, I gotta be honest, if you came to me when I was like 13 and was like, hey man, I know you're kind of lost right now and you're not knowing what's going on, but how about you come join this religion that's like all of us a family, and it's kind of all the religions put together, but there's aliens. I'd be like, hell yeah, sign me up, let's go. So like I said prior, they believed you had to get rid of all your earthly possessions. The only thing, they all dressed the same, they all ate the same stuff, and you also had to be, actually we're going to get to that in a minute, They would carry around in their pocket every day $5 and a roll of quarters in case they ever had to use a payphone or anything like that, but that's all they carried. I think they still had their IDs, I can't remember correctly. But to be indoctrinated in the group as well, you had to cleanse yourself. You had to make sure not just your outer body was cleansed, but your inner body was cleansed, which meant you had to do the Master Cleanse diet at all times. That's all you did. That's all you ate was the Master Cleanse diet, which is basically you just drank a concoction of like lemon juice, water, cayenne pepper, and organic grade B maple syrup. I can only imagine the havoc that wreaked on their bowels. Now, a lot of people believe that Marshall and Bonnie were a couple, and they weren't. See, they believed that you had, as well as getting rid of all your earthly beings, you didn't engage in earthly relationships, which means you didn't have partners, you didn't have sex, you were celibate. You had to remain celibate. There was no fornicating and masturbating in that house. And like I said, since you remain celibate, even a handful of the Heaven's Gate members chose to castrate themselves to prove their devotion to the higher power, the higher source group as they would call themselves as well, and their devotion to Marshall. Now, in 1985, Bonnie Nettles passed away from cancer. And this is around when Marshall started he was already off his rocker, but now he's completely off the chair and on the floor. And if you've just seen like pictures of Marshall, like I said, I showed some prior, I'll show some again. This man looks panther happen crazy. If your eyelids suck all the way back into your eyeballs when you open your eyes, that's just a red flag. Like, that is a red flag right there. I don't know how else to call it, but it is the reddest of flags. No eyelids, you're crazy. So Marshall would do these like trust exercises where he would say, oh, I got a vision, you need to go stand outside and then we'll be released into the higher power. And then the crew members would go stand outside and nothing would happen. And he'd be like, well, it was a test to see if you're dedicated. And basically when Bonnie died, he basically was like, well, you know, her being, her soul left its earthly body and has ascended into the extraterrestrial life, the higher power. Now, as far as I can remember, or as far as I've read, in all honesty, he wasn't someone like Jim Jones. He wasn't someone like Jim Jones who tried to force people to say, if you leave, you're gonna regret it style. But he was more so, if you want to leave, you want to leave, but just know that you're leaving the cause. You're weak and you won't be able to ascend to your higher power, to your higher being, this, that, and the other, if you don't follow our rituals, our teachings, so on and so forth, blah, 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 blah. I'm pants crapping crazy. So let's recap before we go any further. So, Heaven's Gate got some members now. Now, after Bonnie died and so on and so forth, they didn't have as many members as they used to, but they still had a decent amount. Again, wasn't no Jonestown, but they had a decent following. So, in Heaven's Gate, the whole point is to leave your earthly body, leave your earthly vehicle, and ascend into a higher extraterrestrial power. They believed that Marshall had the same extraterrestrial essence that Jesus Christ did. So he was basically a direct descendant of Jesus Christ. These beliefs were also pushed because Bonnie often talked to prophetic beings, and they also convinced her that her meeting Marshall was predetermined and that he was a prophet, basically. Now, while in the Heaven's Gate cult, you were not allowed to have any kind of human relationship. You cannot have sex, you cannot masturbate, you cannot have any kind of human connection, especially with anyone outside of the cult. With that being said, a handful of members, including Marshall, chose to castrate themselves. No thank you, okay? You had me hooked with the aliens and the smorgasbord of religions, but I'm good. Not gonna go any further with that, my friend. You calling yourself, the direct descendant of Jesus Christ? A little weird, not gonna lie. That's not something normal people do. And then so Bonnie Nettles dies, and then the teachings get a little bit more wacko, which, again, that's hard to... it's a really hard one to beat, but somehow Mr. Marshall just one-ups his game every time. which is a wild thing to say. It's like if you took the Tiger King and the Wild Wonderful Whites of West Virginia, put them together. It's like a path, a whirlwind of weirdness, destruction that you really just can't look away from. And you couldn't drink or do drugs, so it was just like no fun at all in there. One thing that I found that was really different from the other cults that I've looked at is a lot of the times a cult will give you a us versus them complex. Like they don't know what they're talking about. They just want to bring us down, this, that, and the other. It's the same thing with your family. They don't understand. They're going to stray you away from the cult, blah, 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 blah. You know, such as Jonestown, they did the same thing. But in Heaven's Gate, it wasn't really like that. It was more so they believed so heavily in what they were being taught that they didn't have this. They saw things in black and white. They didn't really see it as an us versus them thing. It was them just trying to ascend to a higher power, to leave their earthly vehicles and transcend to their celestial beings. You know, if you look at someone like the FBI files and things of that nature, in different religions, you know, and like Mormonism, you're not John Smith, your brother Smith, this, that, and the other. But in Heaven's Gate, they just gave you a completely different name than your earthly name. It's very interesting, and I highly suggest looking at more information as well. Like usual, most of our videos, if I try to fit everything I wanted to in this video, it'd be way too damn long. So now around the 90s, as I said prior, they were panhandling a lot to make money. The followers had to give up their earthly possessions, had to give the cult all their money, this, that, and the other. Well, they started making a lot of money designing websites for people. That's where they got most of their money from. All the funds for the houses they stayed in, their clothes, what have you. It all came from designing websites for people. And in fact, if you go to the Heaven's Gate website, I'll post a picture of it. That's not like a snapshot from the 90s. It actually still looks like that, and it is actually still a fully functioning website. You can go to their website and read up on everything. It looks exactly like this. It's insane, but that's where they got most of their money, to where they were able to rent out a 9,000 square foot mansion that was $7,000 a month. So like I said, after, you know, Bonnie's death, they started making websites for people. That's how they got their money. They started referring to themselves as the higher source. And a lot of the recruitment came from internet videos uploaded to their website. Like I said, back in the day, the internet was not what it is today. It was not streamed like it is. It was a very hard place to navigate. And that's how they, like I said, you know, they made most of their money designing websites, because people didn't really know how to do that back then. It wasn't that easy. And they uploaded a lot of like initiation videos and stuff like that to their website, which gained them new membership. And with new membership comes giving up all your earthly possessions, such as money and what have you. And like they couldn't have any human connections with people, which meant their family. You couldn't have any connections with your family, because it was just seen as something to get in the way from the main purpose and the main goal, which was reaching that higher power, that higher being. And so I think there was only one time during the there was only one time that the members were allowed to go see their family members, and I'm pretty sure that was Mother's Day. And it wasn't even from our show, like, oh, here, let me give you this treat and you can go see your family. It was more so the family members would stop harassing the members of the cult to come home, and they could tell their family members that they're happy, they're fine, they don't want to come home. So they make all this money, they've got their mansion. Like I said, it was a 9,200 square foot mansion in Rancho Santa Fe, California. And that's where all 38 members would start preparing for what eventually was their demise. Now, they believed that a passing comet by the name of Hale-Bopp was a representation of the closure of Heaven's Gate. Now, what they believed, that there was an extraterrestrial spacecraft, pretty much a UFO, trailing this comet. And as they left their earthly vehicles, their bodies, as the comet was passing, the extraterrestrial beings in the spacecraft trailing Hale-Bopp's comet would take their souls and take their existence and take them to a level of existence above human. They believed it was the only way to evacuate Earth. Now, what seems like mass suicide to us, they didn't see it as suicide. They literally just saw it as leaving their earthly body behind, because all it was a a vehicle made out of meat. That's exactly how they thought of it, and that their soul was going to be brought into this higher power by extraterrestrial beings in the tail of this comet. So one of the interesting things they did for preparation of Hale-Bopp's approach and the supposed UFO traveling in its tail was they purchased some alien abduction insurance, because duh, who doesn't need that? It would pay out $1 million per person, and it covered abduction, impregnation, and death by alien. March 19th, Marshall tapes himself in a video he called Dew's Final Exit, which basically he explains what I just explained to you, that the UFO spacecraft traveling behind Hale-Bopp is going to lift him and his followers' souls essentially into a level of existence above human, and that the earth was going to be recycled, and this was the only way it was physically possible for their souls to ascend. And in preparation for their ascension, they all had their final meal, which was at Marie Callender's, which is apparently a chain restaurant in California. I've never heard of it, but they all ate the same thing. Essentially, they had iced tea. I think they had turkey pot pie, and for dessert, they had cheesecake with blueberries on top. Not the worst last meal, honestly. But the waitress that served them said it was, they seemed in high spirits. Everyone seemed happy, seemed like they were having a great time. There was no sign of any individuals kind of like, hey, maybe we shouldn't do this, bud. But imagine you not liking turkey pot pie, and you're just like, man, this sucks, dude. I wanted a cheeseburger. But you don't have any other time to go get the cheeseburger because, well, after this, buddy, it's off to the UFO. So the 39 members of Heaven's Gate, including Marshall, then went back to their home, the mansion that they had been renting out, and proceeded to continue with their ritual. They mixed phenobarbital with applesauce and pudding, and then they washed that down with a big old heaping glass of vodka. Imagine not drinking and then the last thing you taste is vodka. What could be worse? Once they drank and ate their concoction, they were all dressed in the same thing as well. You've probably seen pictures of it. They had black shirts on, black sweatpants, matching black and white Nike Decades athletic shoes, basically. Which, funny story, after this happened, Nike was like, ooh, yeah, bad press, no good, and they discontinued the Decades. But you can still find them online to buy, but they're like $40,000. Because of this, those shoes have skyrocketed in price, and they're kind of ugly, to be honest. Heaven's Gate got those outfits not because it was significant, it was because it was like the cheapest they could find. But the shoes are now selling for like anywhere from like $50,000 to $100,000. It's bananas. So the way it worked is they went in groups of threes over a course of 3 days. As one group took their own life, the next group cleaned them up, took care of them, placed them in their bunk beds, and not placed them in the bunk beds. Once they drank and ate their concoction, they put a plastic bag over their head and tied it off to so if the poison didn't kill them, they would asphyxiate to death. They weren't taking any chances here. They had to get on that damn spacecraft flying behind Hale-Bopp. And they, like I said, they did it in groups of three. So once one group went, the next group cleaned them up, got them looking pretty, and then placed a purple cloth over them, and then went on with their day of ascension, so to speak. And it's, like I said, it's funny if you read the articles, they got the sweats and the t-shirts because it represented unity, but the shoes were just because they got a really good deal. You may be in a cult, but just because you're in a cult don't mean you can't go bargain hunting. After it's all said and done, the members of Heaven's Gate had taken their own life. Now, they did leave behind, I believe, 1 or 2 people, and the reason they left those people behind were because they needed someone to take over their assets and continue running the website and things of that nature. As well as, after everything was all said and done, someone called in an anonymous tip to the sheriff's department and basically told them, hey, I'll give you this address, there's been a mass suicide, and so the bodies had been found. Each one of the members of the time of their death had their ID in their pocket. I think they had their birth certificate as well, and they had a $5 bill as well as a couple quarters to make phone calls. Usually when they were alive, they kept $5 bills in their pockets if they needed to take any kind of transportation that covered the fare, and then they had the quarters in case they needed to make phone calls. They also had a patch on their shirt that said Heaven's Gate Away Team. So even though they were in a cult, they still kind of had a sense of humor. I can dig that. Again, this was such a big deal. It swept the nation. It was just absolutely bananas at the time. It made global news, if I remember correctly. And in my personal opinion, it's one of the most interesting acts of mass suicide because, as in Jonestown, that wasn't a mass suicide. That was a murder. Jonestown, Jim Jones murdered his followers. Whereas Heaven's Gate, they were all happy and willing to go. This is what they truly believed in. And it's easy for us on the outside looking in to be like, yeah, bro, you're in a cult, because we only see point A to point B. Now, the people that usually joined this cult were people looking for a sense of family, a sense of unity, and they found that at Heaven's Gate. And it was easy for them to give up their worldly possessions in return, because they truly believed the teachings that were going on, that they would receive this existence higher than human, this being taken by extraterrestrial beings and having their souls lifted, so to speak. And if it was any of us back then, that could have been any one of us. Like I said, it's very easy to judge from the outside looking in. But brainwashing isn't just like, hey, you're in my cult now, what's up? It takes time, but there's a reason why cults are so successful. There's a reason why certain cults have thousands and thousands of members, because they're very good at brainwashing and they are experts at manipulation. Now on YouTube you can find tapes. So before the members of Heaven's Gate took their own lives, they all made pretty much outro videos that explained who they were and what they were doing. And in these videos they all seem happy. They all seem very upbeat and like they're just having the time of their life. I would play some of this for you, but the owner of the Heaven's Gate website, one of the cult members that is still alive, somehow got the music rights to the video, even though there's no music playing. But if I put it on my YouTube channel, within 3 seconds, even playing 3 seconds of it, YouTube will flag it, and all the money that I may make off this video will go to them, and that cult don't need none of my money, let me tell you. But I highly encourage you to go check it out. They also have Marshall's farewell tape. Watch that as well. The initiation tapes are on on YouTube too, and you can also check out their website. But that is the story of Heaven's Gate. It's just, cults are just so fascinating to me. I don't know why. Maybe it's just that, like I've said before, the willingness to follow somebody when they're preaching something you truly, truly believe in. It's absolutely bananas to me. But now it's time to pick ourselves a name out of the murder pot to see who we're going to be covering next week. Alright, so let's give this a shake, 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 shake. Take our top off. Get her in there. Oh, who's that? Who we got here? What's going on? The Black Metal Murders. I think I wrote this one about the band Mayhem, which is super interesting if you're into black metal. I would imagine if you're into black metal, you know exactly what this means, what the story behind this is. But it's a very interesting one, so I am excited to do it. It's always fun telling this story to people who are not familiar with this one. I don't know why I wrote the Black Metal Murder and not just the band Mayhem, but it is what it is. So that is who we are going to be covering next week. I promise I will have another Paranormal Corner up soon. I've just been visiting family the past 2 weekends, so it's hard to, film 2 videos and get them edited by the time they're supposed to come out. Real pain in the buns, let me tell you. Cults are just fascinating to me. We do joke about it, but at the end of the day, people did lose their lives. And even if our beliefs may not have been the same, my condolences do go out to their family. Keep your peepers open for the podcast. I've been uploading it to all the major platforms. I'm just waiting for Spotify to fix the issues with the play button. Don't know why it's not working on mobile Works on my desktop, doesn't work on mobile though. But once everything's squared away, I will start promoting it, and you guys will definitely be the first to know. Thank you so much for your support. Also, with the podcast, we may be starting a Patreon program where you can pay X amount of dollars and you'll get extra content from me and Goose. But thank you so much, guys, for the support. It means the absolute world to me. I love making content for you guys. I hope I can do it full time someday. I will see you next weekend for a Paranormal Corner. I don't know, we may do, not Paranormal Corner, I'm sorry. I'll see you next weekend for another true crime installment. But I think for Paranormal Corner next week, we may do some cryptids. I'm thinking cryptids. So if you have a cryptid that you find interesting and want to learn about, put it down in the comments below, and we will cover it in our next Paranormal Corner. If you have a true crime that you want to see, go ahead and place it in the comments below, and we will add it to our murder pot. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day. If you like this, please consider giving me a like and subscribe. I love you. Be kind to others. Most of all, be kind to yourself, and wear a mask. I will see you next week.